Welcome back, NFL fans. Today we're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins and is their season over? Now, most likely at 3-7, your season's probably over. But when you dive deeper into it and look at their schedule and see especially their next 4 games coming up, very winnable games coming up here. And if they go on this little run here, is there a chance they get to 7-7 and enter their final 3 games with a 500 record and have a chance to make this really great playoff run despite starting 1-7? So we'll dive into the schedule, go over do I think they have a chance, and hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and let's get into it. So the Dolphins came into this year with pretty high expectations. They were a team that I think was projected around 9 wins this year by Vegas, and the first year, Brian Flores, they started off terribly, like 0-6, and people were like, is this an 0-16 team? They benched Josh Rosen. By the way, I have a future Josh Rosen video coming up because he looked awful on Thursday, and I have to talk about that. But anyway, they bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick. They end the year on like winning their last 5 out of 6 or something. They end the year 6-10. Then 2020 happens last year, the COVID year, and I think the Dolphins went 9-7 and were one of the final teams that just missed the playoffs. So they just missed it last year. They could have won, of course, but they lost to the Bills in Week 17. And then this year they come into 2021 with all these expectations. They sign Will Fuller, and it's year 3 of Flores, and Tua Tagovailoa's in year 2 now, and they're like, all right, this is the year. But the Dolphins, of course, had this awful start. They had a tough schedule. They started out the year playing the New England Patriots. They got a win there, but then they ended up losing like 7 straight. Buffalo, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Tampa Bay. We remember the Jacksonville game. That was a terrible loss. Atlanta was a bad loss, of course, by 2 points, and then lost to Buffalo. But the last 2 games for them, they beat up pretty badly on Houston. It was 17-9, but I guess the game was close throughout. But still, they beat Houston, and they beat Baltimore on Thursday night. So now they're 3-7. And we've seen situations like this before where teams get off to terrible starts, but then somehow they just capture lightning in a bottle and have a great second half of the year. And sometimes it results in a playoff berth, and sometimes it results in just falling short, and we'll see which one the Dolphins are a part of as the season goes on. I had to look this up. So the 2014 Carolina Panthers started out the year 3-8-1. Then they won their final 4 games in the regular season, ended the year at 7-8-1, and somehow made the playoffs. They actually won a wild card game, then lost at Seattle in the divisional round. But sometimes when you start off badly, teams find a way to rebound. We saw this with the Colts a couple years ago when they had Andrew Luck. It was the first year of Frank Reich, I believe, and the Colts started out like 1-5 or like 0-4, 1-5, something around there, and the Colts rebounded and I think won that division that year. So these things happen. I don't think the Dolphins are like a great football team, but they do have a great schedule coming up. I know the final 3 weeks for them is hard, but the next 4 games, as I mentioned, are very easy. So for the Dolphins, tomorrow they're at the Jets, and you would think they could and should win that game. I think it's a 3-point spread, and I think the Jets actually have a chance of winning. So in 24 hours, this video might just be completely just not worth making because the Jets, if they win that game, the Dolphins season is definitely over at that point. But let's say they beat the Jets. Then they face Carolina at home. Can they beat Carolina and Cam Newton at home? Sure, why not? Like, it could happen. I think Carolina's probably going to be favored by a few points, but it could happen. They play the Giants at home. The Giants are getting better, but it's the Giants. I'm a Giants fan. I have no idea what to expect from that team going forward. Then they have a Week 14 bye week, a late bye week. Hopefully get some guys healthy. I think maybe they get Devontae Parker back. Will Fuller should be back at that point. So you get all your weapons back. You come out to bye. You play the Jets at home. That's a great matchup, of course. But then here, so let's say they win those 4 games, right? The Dolphins are now at 7-7, but then in late December, they're at New Orleans, ESPN game, probably a Monday night game. Then they're at Tennessee, and then they're home versus New England, who they already beat this year. So those are like really tough games to end the year, but there is a world where if the Dolphins play really good football the next 4 or 5 weeks, they can actually go 7-7 if they find a way to handle their business versus the Jets, the Giants, and the Carolina Panthers. I mean, it's possible. It's not impossible, but they have to be better than they have been playing because their offense is still not good enough. I mean, despite putting up 22 points last week against Baltimore, they got a defensive touchdown in that game. So ultimately, it was 15 offensive points. They put up 17 offensive points against Houston. They put up 11 offensive points against Buffalo the week prior. Their offense has to be better. I do have to acknowledge that, if we even think about the Dolphins making the playoffs this year. So let me know in the comments, guys. Do you think the Dolphins have a chance of making the playoffs? I think they'll be in in the hunt category for the next couple weeks if they start winning these games here. But ultimately, there are much better teams in the AFC. You look at the playoff picture right now, you have teams like the Browns that are still ahead of them, even the Raiders, the Colts, the Bengals. I mean, the Steelers might fall out of the playoffs at some point, especially if their offense can't figure anything out. But I would find it hard to believe they find a way to make the playoffs, especially with the way, Buffalo and New England's going to play the rest of the year probably. So the AFC East is probably out of the picture, but the wild card spot, I mean, it's possible. Once again, it's possible, but I just think there's better teams out there. And the chances of the Dolphins actually winning their next 4 games is not as likely as them losing one of those games. You know what I mean? So I would say they're going to be in the hunt at some point because they should win at least 3 of their next 4, but knowing the Dolphins, they'll probably screw that up at some point, and the final 3 games are very tough. So I will say they fall just short, but it is possible. I will say that. So we'll find out what they do the rest of the year. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.